Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we're going to be doing a quick catch up on everything that's gone down on day 2 of free agency, focusing on the two big moves of the day, that being Klay Thompson to the Dallas Mavericks and Isaiah Hartenstein to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And we're going to start with that one, Logan. We have known for some time that OKC has had their eyes on the former Knicks big. They end up throwing him a bag. 3 years, $87 million. How do you feel about his fit in OKC?
Crushed it. Home run move by the Thunder. This is one of my favorite moves of this offseason so far. This is like a dream fit too. We mentioned this stat last time. Oklahoma City was 28th in rebound rate this past season. And even bigger than that, it just gives them an actual big body in the front court, right? Chet Holmgren was the only 7-footer in their rotation previous to this, and the next biggest guy in this lineup was Jay Will at 6'9", 240 pounds. In Hartenstein, you're adding a guy who is 7 feet tall and 250 pounds. It gives you some extra lineup versatility. You can run Chet at the 4, Hartenstein at the 5 in some lineups. You have a real, legitimate backup 5 if that's what you want to do with Hartenstein. But point blank, you're just adding an elite rebounder and rim protector. This was the 6th best rim protector inside 6 feet last season by defensive field goal percentage. And guess what? You're pairing him with the guy who was right in front of him in that stat, in Chet Holmgren, who was the 5th best rim protector inside 6 feet by defensive field goal percentage. So, I mean, that is elite interior defense. Hartenstein was also 7th in offensive rebounds per game. And so you look at this fit too offensively, you're adding on that end. This is a guy with legitimate touch on the inside. He shot 69% in the restricted area. In the regular season, he shot 52% in the paint non-restricted area. And in the playoffs, shot 62% there. You know, I don't think NBA casuals are going to understand the gravity of this move, Carson. I saw a lot of people online clowning this move. I saw a lot of people downplaying this move. This is a really valuable rotation piece. This is a really damn good modern center, and he addresses one of Oklahoma City's biggest needs. This is point blank one of my favorite moves of the offseason thus far. I'm so glad Oklahoma City got him, and I think he fits like a glove here.
It's a big win. Hartenstein is so good, dude. I felt like once Randall went down throughout that playoff run, he was the Knicks' 3rd best player after just Jalen Brunson and OG. He does basically everything you want from a big who is not a star, right? Who's not bringing dominant post scoring or elite floor spacing, what have you, that sort of offensive volume at such a high level. He is, as you mentioned, an elite offensive rebounder, a really high level pure rim protector. On top of that, has some of the best hands of any big in the league, was towards the top of the league in terms of steals by all bigs, is pretty agile, capable of guarding in space. Offensively, one of the best touch finishers in basketball, one of the best passing bigs in the NBA. Like, his ability to run handoffs, to spot cutters from the top of the key is very valuable to an offense. He brings the dimension of physicality in rebounding that has been desperately lacking in OKC. So I've said for a while, and everybody has said, that obviously they need to address the size and physicality and the rebounding in the front court. My preferred path had been go out there, try to add a big 4 alongside Chet. You can keep Chet at the 5, and you can maintain your offensive identity, playing 5 out, playing with pace, having lots of ball handling. But there's only a couple guys who fit that bill. And although I think this is a lot to pay for Hartenstein, I thought he'd get somewhere north of 20. I didn't expect him to be pushing 30 a year. You added a really good basketball player to the front court, which you absolutely had to do in one way or another. And I do think it provides them with an incredible variety of options just in terms of the lineups that they can trot out, man. This on top of adding Alex Caruso in this offseason, subtracting Josh Giddey, who was your biggest minus shooter and your biggest minus defender in your rotation. There's just no weak points on this OKC team anymore on either side of the ball. And again, it's a little bit of an adjustment in terms of how Hartenstein fits in this system because he is a non-floor spacing big. But you have the ability in any matchup to still go 5 out, to say, okay, Hartenstein, we actually don't think that we need that size as much. We're playing a smaller team here. We want to maintain our quickness. We want to get out and play with pace. We want to be able to switch everything even more confidently than we feel we can with you on the floor. You can absolutely do that. And you can trot out a lineup with SGA and Caruso or whatever second wing you want out there. Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, Kason Wallace, J-Dub, and Chet. Like, you've only gotten better in terms of your ability to play 5 out, and you have significantly fixed the biggest hole that your roster had for some specific matchups. They're just the most talented team in the West now, and they have the most combinations of any team in the West. That, to me, has to make them the favorite. Now, some guys on this roster still need to progress individually. J-Dub has to be more capable, more consistent as a second creator than he was in this past year's run. The spot-up shooting and decision-making from the supporting cast players needs to be more consistent. But nobody else is going up and down the roster with as many really good basketball players as the Oklahoma City Thunder. Their perimeter defense is sensational. Their interior defense is sensational. Like, you think about what the Cavs tried to build with their sort of 2 rim protector setup. Imagine having that with 2 awesome defensive guards with multiple really high-level perimeter defenders, and your bigs are also actually skilled offensively. Hartenstein can't shoot, but he's an incredibly skilled touch finisher and passer. Like, that is just an insanely complete basketball team. And if you look at some of the specific matchups, you take on Denver, and to me, this now puts you in a really, really good spot. Because when it comes to guarding Nikola Jokic, which is an incredibly difficult task, Isaiah Hartenstein is not a great post defender like you see against Joel Embiid, right? Mitchell Robinson was the better option there. He's a little bit bigger. He's a little bit stronger. But Hartenstein is a good post defender. So you have at least a good post defender to throw at Nikola Jokic, whereas previously Chet has his length, but he's just too slight to hang with Jokic down there in those super physical playoff environments. Hartenstein can be your primary defender on Jokic. Chet can be on Aaron Gordon, roaming, which we know if you can do it with a legitimately good post defender on Jokic, that is the best defensive outcome. That's the best formula that you can have, having your elite help defender constantly there to take away those interior passes, to challenge them, to challenge Jokic's shots in the paint. And then on top of that, you have these awesome perimeter defenders. You have athletes who are pests, who can double Jokic and recover. Like, that defensively is a pretty good formula. And then whose offensive role players do I trust more? Whose shooters do I trust more? Like, it's OKC, man. How many dudes down the roster do you have to go before you're at, like, the equivalent of Denver's 5th best player? Because you can go a lot of names, man. I mean, there is no question that you go 6 deep and there's a big-ass gap, right? When you're going SGA, J-Dub, Chet, Caruso, Hartenstein, Lou Dort, all of those guys you're significantly more confident in as basketball players than Christian Braun stepping up as that 5th starter. Then you go Kason, Aaron Wiggins. I'd argue I trust those guys more than Christian Braun. That's 8 dudes. Isaiah Joe, like, there's a real conversation to be had. Like, it's just getting overwhelming, man. And now against a massive team like Minnesota, they match up better physically. Of course, they're still not going to be as stout, as huge in the front court, but they don't have to be. They just have to be able to compete on the glass, to compete in terms of being able to guard 2 bigs. And then they have way more offensive skill. They're going to play faster. They have more creators. Advantage goes their way. Versus Dallas, the team who knocked them out this past year, if J-Dub progresses, if you shoot better collectively, if Chet plays better, he shoots better, then you just clearly have more basketball talent. And now you have more lineup versatility in that matchup as well. It's just really, really impressive. We've known that they have been sitting in position to ascend as the next great NBA team. And I don't want to throw that out there because with this CBA, we are seeing clearly that it is difficult to retain really high-end talent. And we have seen ever since the Warriors won their last title in 2018, a new champion every year. And also the Celtics are obviously super talented. And as of right now, to me, they're still the favorite in the NBA. But just with the overwhelming number of young talents and assets, future draft picks that OKC has had in cap space, they've been the team, obviously, you look at and you say, there's no reason that you shouldn't be contending for the title this year. And I feel like I was a little too critical of their offseason approach up to this point when we did our show yesterday reacting to day one for a couple reasons. Number one, I didn't like the fact that they had declined the team options for Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe, because I was like, if you can get those guys for $10 million or less, okay, that's awesome. I thought they would demand more in the neighborhood of like close to $15 million. They get Aaron Wiggins on a 5-year, $47 million extension, Logan. I think that's one of the best contracts in the league. Isaiah Joe, 4 years, $48 million. That's not as crazy a value, and you do have to be ready to replace those guys down the line once you're paying J-Dub big money. You're paying Chet big money. But okay, great. You have them on super favorable contracts. You can move those guys very easily. And even if this is an overpay for Hartenstein in a vacuum, I don't think it's an overpay for OKC specifically. What a great basketball team. And I think that they are big, big winners, man, because they are getting better, actively getting better, retaining their assets, while a team like Denver is letting dudes walk. A team like Denver is regressing simply because they aren't maintaining some of the core players to their basketball identity, and OKC is trending upwards in terms of all their individual players. At this point, to me, I think they have to be the favorite in the West. Do you agree with that?
I do. The key component of that is how young they are and the trajectory, like you mentioned. Like, the one issue I might have had with this offseason, because I think they've crushed it in every other regard, Wiggins on that kind of money is an absolute steal.
Yeah.
And like you say, you have the flexibility to, if you need to move off of those guys, I think most NBA teams would be interested in those contracts. Those are great value deals. The only thing I may have done differently if I was Oklahoma City was draft De Silva instead of Topic, just because I'd like one more really reliable
Agreed.
front court guy. But even if you're slotting Jay Will now in at the 4 instead of the 5 spot, it's like you still have a good big wing now. Like, that guy can pretty seamlessly play alongside Hardenstein. Like, he's super skilled offensively. But even with the Topic pick, it's like that guy has one of the highest ceilings potentially of anybody in this draft class.
Yeah.
So why not? Would I have them? Because it's not about Denver to me anymore. I think Denver is sliding. Like, to me, the question is, now with Dallas adding Clay, it's like, is it Dallas or Minnesota that they're competing with? Like, regardless, it's Oklahoma City. It starts with how much better SGA, Chet, and J-Dub are going to get next season. That, to me, is if they're going to be number one. But again, it's like you can expect that because of how young these guys are. And Chet and J-Dub completely underwhelmed in these playoffs. Like, if we get those guys at what they were giving you during the regular season, for sure Oklahoma City is the favorite. They have crushed this offseason. They've added 2 elite defenders at positions of need in Caruso and Hardenstein. Yeah, I think they are. And the scary thing is that with all of these other future assets, with these young contracts that they have, the moment a complimentary superstar becomes available, right? The moment we hear a murmur of Oklahoma City could be right in that competition and completely upgrade in that regard, yeah, they're number one to me out west moving forward. Until Denver makes a massive move, which I don't really see on the table or how they're going to be able to make that happen.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City's number one until further notice.
Yeah, the reason that I bring up Denver is I still do really like the formula with their top 4. I think there's a clear drop-off from KCP to Christian Brown. Hopefully Christian Brown can develop some, but it's like the Jokic factor, him just being overwhelmingly the best basketball player on the floor in any of these matchups, that really does matter. The shot quality that he creates is so, so high. But like, you need Jamal to be great, and Jamal is going to be dealing in a series against Oklahoma City, theoretically, with Lou Dort, with Alex Caruso, with Kason Wallace, with Jalen Williams, with 2 really high-level rim protectors.
With SGA.
That is tough. Right. Well, I'm talking about who he's being guarded by. Yeah, SGA is good as well. SGA is awesome as an off-ball defender as well as a low man. Boy. And then they have more offensive players who you trust by a good bit. I just think they're starting to realize the vision. This past year, we knew, you and I felt similarly, like, this team is so talented. It's so obvious the future is so bright. I think Chet's going to be a top 10 player. I think J-Dub's going to be a top 20 player. SGA is already a top 5 player. And you really like a lot of the depth pieces. But moving off of Giddey for not just the best guard defender in basketball, a real positive offensively as well, who fits, who plays with pace, who can be a secondary playmaker, who hit 40% of his threes, who's a great cutter in Alex Caruso, fits very much in your drive and kick scheme. that was such a massive move in terms of addition by subtraction and just adding an awesome basketball player. And as you say, Logan, they could not be done. I would like for them to have one more like big forward as well. I don't think it's that important at this point. Jay Will is playable at the 4. I would have loved for them to take De Silva, but I really do like Topic. I think long term, I mean, if you add another dude with that sort of offensive skill, I could just make them even more ridiculously great as a basketball team. But like they could still go out and get Lauri Markkanen if they want, man. They have every asset they need to do it, and you could easily give up Lou Dort because you already have a bevy of awesome perimeter defenders, and you just maintained a couple of your depth wings on very reasonable contract extensions. It's scary. It is scary how good the Thunder are. And at this point, I do think the Celtics still have the more overwhelming talent at the top of their roster. Like that starting 5 is absolutely ridiculous. But OKC would be an interesting matchup there because I do think that they have real quality perimeter defenders. Now, they don't necessarily have like a super big wing, but I think that a Lou Dort can guard Jason Tatum pretty well. They have the offensive skill. They have the bench advantage. I would still go Boston. I think I need to see a little more consistency from Chet and J-Dub to have them over Boston at this point. And Boston is obviously just the team that went out and did it in very convincing fashion. But OKC to me is the one who is most knocking on the door. I think that they had a real opportunity this offseason. They have seized it. I would have them as the number 2 team in the NBA at this point. Know the beautiful thing about being a sports fan? There's only like 2 days the whole year without a game. 2. With so much happening and so much action, that makes just about every day game day at DraftKings Sportsbook.
It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. It really couldn't be any easier or any simpler. Baseball, golf, UFC, there's something for every fan of every sport to bet on at DraftKings. And I know it's early, but football season will be here before you know it.
And if you're new to DraftKings, you gotta check this out. New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. But as you mentioned, Logan, it is an arms race out west, and the Dallas Mavericks are very much involved in that arms race as well. They have completed a sign and trade to add Klay Thompson on a 3-year, $50 million deal. They gave up Josh Green to the Hornets to clear up cap space for this. They've sent a couple of second rounders to the Warriors as well. But the bottom line headline is they have Klay Thompson now on this team for 3 years, $50 million. How does this help Dallas?
Helps them immensely. I love this. Three-point shooting was a major issue and a major shortcoming of Dallas in the finals. They shot sub 32% from deep against Boston in the finals. And this is where I mocked Klay to go our last couple of free agency episodes. So I love the fit. And I've talked about how he's going to help Luka and Kyrie score the ball. One, again, with their shortcoming shooting the basketball, you were adding the second greatest shooter of all time. This guy shot 38% off the catch last season. He is consistently around 40%, and I expect his shot quality to go up even higher playing alongside Luka and Kyrie. But the biggest difference to me is that teams aren't going to be able to help off of Klay in the same way that they helped off of P.J. Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. You know, OKC was just conceding open 3 after open 3 to those guys to help load up and limit Luka and Kyrie offensively. You can't do that anymore. You leave Klay wide open off of these guys, he's going to wet up, right? You're giving him a warm-up jumper. But also, on the inverse of that, how he's going to help Luka and Kyrie score in isolation, because you can't do that, right? I think it's going to create more one-on-one advantages for those guys to attack, and they're 2 of the best isolation scorers in all of basketball. So offensively, I just think they have completely gone up another level. It's going to fit like a glove, and especially when you have 2 ball-dominant guys like Luka and Kyrie that need the rock in their hands, what better compliment did they give them one of the greatest shooters ever who doesn't need to have the ball in his hands? Klay scored what? What is the stat? 50 points on 11 dribbles? Yeah. Klay doesn't need to have the rock in his hands. Now, I think you're sacrificing a little bit defensively by losing Derrick Jones Jr., right? That's probably a point of concern just because you're only like your guy's going to have to be PJ Washington. That's going to be the guy who's going to have to go up and clamp the other team's best offensive player. So I think you sacrifice some defensively, but I'm okay with that because they have gone up a complete other level in terms of offense. I think this is a great value deal for them too, and I'm surprised, right? I heard Clay got offered 2 years, $48 million from Golden State, and he in turn accepts 3 years, $50 million. So it is interesting though. Like I know the state taxes come into play, so like he's probably actually making comparable money because Texas is way more lax with their taxes, but the per year deal is significantly different. But I love this. I'm happy for Clay. I think he complements Luka and Kyrie really well, and I think Dallas needed to make a major upgrade offensively because they were just too limited in terms of scoring around Luka and Kyrie. I love this deal.
I think that it is a big win for the Mavs. My favorite fit for Clay was Denver offensively. That doesn't happen. Another loss in the column for Calvin Booth and the Denver Nuggets this offseason. Really feel like they need to upgrade that position offensively. But I thought that because it's like, what a great motion-based offense, right? There's so many actions going. There is so much incentive for off-ball movement. I thought Clay would fit in really nicely there. But Dallas is a pretty darn good option as well. The reality is just at this stage in his career, he can't be your second option offensively. Like, basically every team in the league needs a shot creator at that spot, and Clay is not that. And unfortunately, he's limited enough as an athlete at this point to where like you are getting 0-0 driving, rim pressuring ability from him. Obviously never been a key aspect of his game, but his rim rate has gone down like dramatically in recent years. So he takes a lot of tough jumpers when he's supposed to be your second option, and that can be frustrating. It can take your offense out of rhythm, and when his defense has dropped more to average as opposed to stellar as it was earlier in his career, it was not a good situation for him with Golden State. But I think he's going to have a significantly better season in Dallas. And they absolutely needed excellent spot-up shooting alongside these guys. You mentioned how it let them down in the finals against Boston. They were 31% on wide-open threes. And you see just the disrespect that was given towards these shooters in various series, in various different ways. OKC was blitzing, and they were just saying, okay, anybody else beat us with a 4-on-3. Boston was putting their bigs on wings just to say, we don't want these guys involved guarding the pick and roll with these vertical threat lobs. We want to take away those easy lobs, switch everything with Jason Tatum, and we feel like we can put Kristaps Porzingis in drop coverage, and he can just completely leave Derrick Jones Jr. above the break. He can leave PJ Washington above the break, and now Luka's playing 1-on-2, and he can kick out to those shooters every day of the week. We don't care. We don't think they're going to punish us. That dynamic does completely change with Klay Thompson, one of the greatest shooters in basketball history, and he's still an amazing, amazing shooter, man. So on top of just that pure floor spacing, there's the ability to explode, which the Mavs really just needed. The burden night after night on Kyrie and Luka was so significant, and that's the other thing. It's like when Boston was able to guard those guys straight up pretty well, not overhelp, and you don't concede like just easy lobs, easy corner threes, you're not getting any level of offensive punch from the supporting cast. Clay isn't going to be a creator, but he's just such a great shot maker that he can explode on any given night. And you need somebody, you certainly want somebody who can consistently give you that punch of 15 plus a night. They did not have that. I think that Clay absolutely brings that. And I hope that he injects a little bit of movement into this offense, because that's the difference between Denver and Dallas, right? Dallas is a more stagnant offense. It is more predicated upon very isolation-heavy basketball. Stars do your things. Everybody else stand around and watch. Clay's a really good spot-up shooter. So, hey, he'll be a really valuable off-ball player just doing that. But I hope that they also do weaponize his gravity when he is moving without the ball, because that is going to open things up for the entire offense. That's a great way to spring him free for more quality looks. It adds another layer. It adds another dimension to a Dallas offense that is really good, but has been pretty one-dimensional up to this point. It's been about Luka and Kyrie, please do everything for us. Everybody else try to knock down your open jumpers. It's a win. getting an offensive talent like Klay. And this is a good value deal. You talk about figuring out the defensive combination. I kind of hope that they start Najee Marshall because you look shocked.
Over Klay?
Yeah. I think that makes them a significantly better defensive lineup. And that's not to say that Klay is a bad defender, because he's not. He's a fine defender at this stage, but I do not want him taking on primary point of attack matchups, nor do I want PJ Washington doing that. I mean, PJ Washington cannot be the guy you're throwing at guards, right? He's just not quick enough, nor is Klay. Luke and Kyrie are not equipped for those matchups. Najee's a 95th percentile isolation defender, man. I mean, he moves really well. 6'7" with a 7'1" wingspan. His versatility to me goes all the way from those smaller guards to those bigger forwards. That to me is the value of bringing in a guy like that. Klay can play more than him. Klay can play 28 minutes a night, and Najee might only play 20. But I think you want to stagger the minutes with Klay where it's just him and one of the star guards. I think if you have all three of them on the floor at once, it's a little problematic for your perimeter defense. And we know that the defensive side of the ball was what Dallas hung their hat on for a lot of the postseason last year. Klay's explosive. I absolutely think he should be playing big minutes for this team, but that specific lineup combination, I don't know that I would start with. I really like Najee Marshall. I do like that signing. I like Derrick Jones Jr. too, but Najee, really good defender, more reliable shooter, brings a little bit more playmaking juice. And I think that's a really, really good lineup overall for Dallas. I just think that they've improved significantly because you look at what they did last year, and as impressive as it was, clearly, right, they were not stacking up in terms of basketball talent to Boston, nor did you think they were as talented as OKC. They were as talented as Denver. Now, OKC's only gotten more talented, so that gap does remain in terms of pure talent, but Dallas has improved. Dallas has caught up to a Denver, and I do think that they have cemented themselves as one of those top 4 teams out west. Some people thought there was going to be a dramatic fall off. I've seen some people write off the whole run because they're like, yeah, they're not actually that talented. Having a third option offensively like this, adding a quality 3-and-D wing like Najee Marshall, adding Quentin Grimes for THJ, who was unplayable too. I really like what they've done on the wings. I really do.
I like the Grimes acquisition too, and I see what you're saying. I mean, it's just nice to have that kind of versatility. Maybe you give Najee 20 minutes. Maybe you play Klay 30, right? It just kind of depends on what the flow of the game. If Klay's clanging jumpers, you say, hey, Klay, I'm not going to play you tonight, buddy. We're going to run with Najee and, Quentin Grimes. If he's hitting shots, maybe you give him some extra burn. But it gives you that versatility. And this is 100% an upgrade they had to make. I just don't think, like you mentioned, I don't know if the run is that replicable if you don't get some extra firepower like that, right? We just kept waiting for PJ and Derrick Jones Jr. You can't overstate how important those guys were to this run in terms of getting hot and having big games at the right time in crucial situations. PJ hitting countless big shots and when they needed him to, and clamping up defensively. I think they've gotten better, and that's what you just have to do every offseason, man. That's the objective. You're always going to lose assets. You're always going to lose important rotational pieces. It's important to replace them and replenish, and they did that. I do think it's a big loss for teams like LA. I think it's a massive loss for Golden State. It's a huge blow for Golden State, right? Klay's your number 2. Now you literally have Carson. Who's Golden State's second best shot maker right now on the roster? Who's their second best shot creator or just
Jonathan
scorer?
Kuminga.
That's a problem. That's a problem, man.
Yeah, I think that this is a disastrous situation for the Warriors. You get back a couple seconds, hooray, and it's not about not re-signing Klay. I don't think that things were going well with Klay in Golden State. Again, he was overtasked as a number 2 option. It was pretty ugly this past year. But their inability to add any sort of win-now value for asset after asset is just so thoroughly disappointing, man. They can't compete in the PG sweepstakes. They turned down the opportunity to add Zach LaVine just for Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins. Maybe there was going to be draft capital attached, but that was the basis of the deal. Chris Paul, who they end up cutting, who they traded Jordan Poole for, who, listen, was playing awful basketball this past year. But at least there was the dynamic shot creation there. And CP, was still one of your better basketball players this past year, man. Like, I wouldn't want him on that contract. I certainly would not. But cutting him outright is still tough to stomach because at least he brought some stability to the second unit. He injected some ball handling, some playmaking. The offense ran at least with some smoothness. And now you look at the roster and it's just in absolute shambles, dude. I mean, it is a joke. We've been talking about this team lacking in a number of ways with Chris Paul and Klay Thompson on the roster, right? Lacking in terms of the shot creation alongside Steph, completely. Lacking in terms of the shot making alongside Steph. Lacking in terms of the size and athleticism in the front court and up and down the roster. And like, you're just continuing to regress. You're continuing to lose good basketball players for close to nothing. And they add DeAnthony Melton, and I like DeAnthony Melton, right? He can defend, he can shoot, he can play make. I think if that's a solid deal, you got to be in the market for a big fish, man. And they're targeting Lauri Markkanen. They're in the Lauri Markkanen sweepstakes. I hope and pray, for the Dubs' sake, that OKC is thinking, you know what, we're good. We don't need to do that anymore. We got Hartenstein. That's our fix in the front court. And that the market isn't as hot as it probably should be. The Spurs, people are talking about in these conversations, I would love a front court of Markkanen and Wemby. I think that that would just be fantastic. The Dubs can offer basically all their picks, but like, they don't have the sort of shiny young asset to attach that an OKC would. Also, maybe their picks aren't expected to be quite as high as San Antonio's just in the next year or two, but honestly, it probably will be.
You don't think Utah would be interested in Kuminga?
I don't think the Dubs would give up Kuminga. I don't think the Dubs would give up Kuminga for anybody, man. And therein lies the problem, Logan. I mean, that's been the problem forever. But at this point, as much as I love the fit with the Lauri Markkanen, he injects size and he's an amazing shooter. He'd be such a great fit in this system, right? He's one of the best off-ball stars in basketball. That makes him so intuitive in the Warriors system, moving without the ball, curling off of screens. He'd be a great rebounder. He's a capable defender. But he is the one guy who it's like, you have to really give up your future. We're not just talking Kuminga. We're talking like 4 firsts, right? He's a much better player than Zach LaVine, but you don't have to do that for Zach LaVine. And that's where the Warriors have just painted themselves into a corner, man. They should trade Steph Curry. That's just 100% what they would be doing if they were thinking of sound basketball mind. And if Steph doesn't want to go, I get it, dude. You owe everything to this guy. He's the best player in your franchise's history. But it would be best for both parties. You're not getting close to winning a playoff series. I don't think you're getting close to the playoffs, man. I mean, everybody around you is either continuing to get better or was already way better than you. You were the 10 seed last year, and now you have lost Chris Paul and Klay Thompson, and you brought back DeAnthony Melton. So, like, best case scenario, you're in a slight deficit to where you were at last year, and you needed to get way, way better. I think they are major losers of this offseason. And I get it. They're not going to be in real contending conversations. You have to try to go out there and win basketball games when Steph Curry is still on your roster. They have shown a complete inability to do that. They have mismanaged asset after asset. They have shown organizationally the wrong mindset in terms of toggling the two timelines. They have overpaid the wrong players. And now here they sit. They're going to be a bad basketball team next year, Logan. A bad basketball team. For Steph Curry, who's going to be 36 years old this season, that just breaks my heart, man. It's not fair. And it sucks. And he really, really would be better off in a different basketball situation. The Warriors would be better off trading him for a haul of assets that you could still get because he's still a top 10 player.
Yeah, I just feel bad for Steph too, man.
I mean, they're not even going to get Goga Batadze, man. He re-signed with the Magic. There goes your fix at center.
Well, you just sit here, man, and it's like the Warriors just have, like, no avenue to being competitive next season. And again, the front office just is showing no urgency or desire to do that. What's going to happen, man? Brandon Podziemski and Trace Jackson Davis turn into monsters? Jonathan Kuminga turns into a star magically? Like, you're exactly right, bro. They should trade Steph for 6 or 7 first-round picks or whatever the hell they can get, man. A young asset. Find a sucker that will overpay for Steph that'll give you everything and more. You let Draymond, Draymond's the next domino that'll fall, and you just move into a rebuild. That's what doesn't make sense. If you were waiting on the rebuild to happen, why are you holding on to Steph? Why are you holding on to these win now assets? It's a timeline thing, man. I'm sick and tired, and I just feel bad for you guys, man. I feel bad for Warriors fans. Like, this is a really sad fall from grace, man, from the greatest basketball ever played with KD's Warriors to a miraculous title run that really does look miraculous at this point, considering where all of those guys have fallen from, to here where this is not a team I would take to make the playoffs. There were points last season where I was like, damn, this team's not that far away, man. I think they're a legit contender. And now we're here at this point in the offseason where this is not a serious basketball team.
No.
This is not a serious basketball team whatsoever. And
No.
it's just embarrassing, man. It is embarrassing. I have no idea what the front office is thinking.
Not a serious basketball team without another star on the roster, man. I mean, it's just a completely undue burden on Steph to carry every single night with multiple non-shooters on the floor without a single other high-level ball handler on the floor. Who the hell wins like that, man? I mean, nothing else even matters. I mean, if you're still valuing Andrew Wiggins, you're worried about the LaVine contract. I don't like the LaVine contract. He's not going to help you win the title, right? Absolutely not. But my God, you have to try. And okay, they say that they're trying for Lauri Markkanen now. Maybe they are. But when have any of these rumors ever actually materialized? Guess what, Logan? They didn't get Pascal Siakam. Why? They wanted their draft picks. They didn't get Bradley Beal. Why? They wanted their draft picks. They didn't get OG Anunoby. Why? They wanted their draft picks. A team that was trying to contend around a superstar in his 30s wanted their draft picks. It's inexcusable to me. I've said it over and over again, but it's organizational malpractice. And if I were a betting man, do I think that they're going to pry Lauri Markkanen away from the Utah Jazz? Probably not. I really hope that they find a way. I think it would be an amazing fit. I think he's an amazing basketball player. But I just don't think that's going to happen, man. If we look at the history of how these things have gone in recent years. If you love Jonathan Kuminga that much, Jonathan Kuminga, who has real flaws as a basketball player that would take a long time to iron out for him to be a legitimate star-level guy, good for you, man. See how that works out for you. Hasn't gone great so far. But I do like DeAnthony Melton. I want to shout out DeAnthony Melton. I don't want to downplay him, dude, okay? Because I like the guy. But, man, can't be your move of the offseason. Can't be your move of the offseason after how last year went. But you know what else can't be your move of the offseason, Logan? Adding Tobias Harris, because nobody wants to do that. 2 years, $52 million to the Detroit Pistons. Going home to Detroit. The man continues to get paid, Logan. How did he do it?
I'm so sorry, Angelo. I'm so sorry, Kofi. Those are the only
Seriously.
Pistons fans I know because
Has
there's
Kofi
not
said
that many.
anything about this? Is he alive?
No, he posted. I saw he posted on IG. The Pistons hanging the banner, and it said, "Didn't pay Tobias Harris the max." So that's a win, man. They
Yeah.
didn't give him all of their money. They only gave him some of their money. I was trying to explain to Angelo, somebody had to pay him, and that's what sucks, is like the teams with cap space, unfortunately, like the Rockets signing Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks last season, like somebody with cap space has to pay these guys. It turns out the Pistons have a lot of it. Tobias Harris sucks. I don't have many nice things to say about Tobias Harris. He sucked in Philadelphia when he was getting paid $40 million. He was missing jumpers. I think he'll do the same here in Detroit. But hey, you're not paying him $40 million. You're only paying him $25 million. So I guess there's some sort of silver lining in that, I suppose.
Yeah. Listen, I actually like it for Detroit. You're so far away, dude. You won 15 games. You had one of the worst offenses I've seen in my life. Having a legitimate shot maker, and that's not to say that Tobias Harris is, right, close to a star-level basketball player, but guess what? He can knock down 35 to 39% of his threes. He's a big forward who can attack some mismatches, who can score some. I mean, it's just having simple, skilled offensive basketball players means a lot more for the Detroit Pistons than it actually should. And cap doesn't mean anything to them at this point. I just want to see Cade put in a position where, like, he can play actual NBA basketball, because I do think that he's really talented, and he has just been put in a brutal, brutal situation. So I like it for Detroit. You're not getting somebody better than Tobias, right? no star-level players coming to play in Detroit, and you're going to have to overpay whoever you wanted to bring in. And this isn't that bad of an overpay, and it's a short-term deal. I honestly like it. I think it was the right course of action. Goga Bitadze, Logan, stays with the Orlando Magic. W for the Magic. But they got to play him. They don't play him.
Exactly. He was
Yeah.
great in Wendell Carter Jr.'s absence last year, man. Play the man. You paid the man.
Seriously.
Now you got to play the man.
You guys aren't ready for the Goga Bitadze discourse. But you got to like the guy. He's got good hands. He's a pretty good rim protector. He's a pretty good rebounder. Got pretty solid touch, feel. I like Goga Bitadze. He's a quality, simple backup big who the Golden State Warriors could have used. Now, I did see this while I was looking for if Kofi had tweeted anything. Shout out Kofi Yaboa, for those who don't know, friend of the show, about the Pistons. I was trying to see if he had said anything. He did quote tweet this from NBA Central. Klay Thompson's antics behind the scenes have been equally exhausting as Draymond Green's, per Jay Dumas reports. Klay has been equally as exhausting behind the scenes, in quotes. It's not as loud. It's not as loud because it's not you stomping on someone's chest. If he's slamming stuff on the bench and sulking and doing that on the court, how do you think it is in practice? The quote continues, but I think that makes a lot of sense, man. Like, Klay has had a lot of problematic moments just in terms of his disposition with the Warriors, particularly over the past year. There have been comments in the press conferences, and it's been realized on the court. Takes bad shots, takes the offense out of flow. Like, I understand a lot of people are going to be very emotional and sentimental about all the incredible things that the Splash Bros and the Warriors always did. It's always going to be framed as the Splash Bros. Who was always the second best player on those teams, Logan? It was Draymond Green, the great Draymond Green. We know that. But it had come to an end. Nothing great can last forever. The Warriors, honestly, should still be in a better place than they are at because of asset mismanagement. But winning that title in 2022 should probably not have been possible, considering the age of their core guys, just the talent of that roster at the time, the injuries that they had been through. That was an incredible cherry on top. But this past year was rough, and I do think that Klay was very much complicit in that.
1,000%, and it's a pride and ego kind of thing. And I'm not saying Klay isn't justified in how he feels. It's hard for any athlete. It's like a golfer that has it forever, and it's just hard dealing with the fact that you're not the same guy anymore. And it's got to be frustrating, the fact that Klay can't move as smoothly as he used to. He can't defend like he used to. He can't even really get downhill or create for himself in the way he used to. And it's just it's something that a lot of athletes have to deal with, man. When you get past your prime, and it's never pretty. It's never, the only athlete I've ever really seen age super gracefully is Tom Brady, but that dude's an alien. You know, he's
he's off the
freak.
TB12, which we all know is just roids. He's off the Anavar. He's off the T. He's off the
got him-
HGH.
I was about to say, man, they got that human growth hormone, man. They got him.
Yeah.
He's all juiced up. Klay, so maybe that's a takeaway. Do roids. You'll be
Amen,
back
brother.
better than ever.
I mean, they're all the rage these days. I hear they work, so go ahead, Klay. Do what it takes. He'll be better off in Dallas. I think he'll be happier there. I think it's a better basketball situation. And for the Dubs, guess you had to move on, but you're screwed. You're kind of screwed no matter what at this point. Hope you get Larry Markkinen somehow. Probably not going to happen. All right, folks, there you go. Quick little recap of day 2 of free agency. Hope you enjoyed. If you missed everything that we said yesterday, go ahead and check out our reaction to that. You can find all of our full shows on our YouTube channel and across all audio platforms. And you can follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram, Nerd Sesh, to see trivia from the shows. You can also follow us on Twitter at nerd_sesh. And you can check out our merch at thevolume.com. You can also join our Discord. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios. So with that, as always, I have been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.